Welcome to this deep dive.
Oh,
We're going to be unraveling a story I think that you're going to find fascinating, but also a little unsettling.
oh yeah.
We're looking at a recent BBC News investigation
Oh, yeah.
about an engineer named Hazar Denli and his claims of some pretty serious safety concerns with electric vehicles made by Vinfast,
Yeah,
a Vietnamese car company.
Oh.
And what makes this even more interesting is that these claims involve potential dangers to drivers and allegations of retaliation.
I guess
Denli for speaking up.
this isn't just about one company or one engineer. This situation really gets to the heart of a much bigger issue, the immense pressure to rapidly innovate in the EV industry, sometimes maybe at the cost of thorough safety checks.
Exactly. And as we unpack the story, you'll see how it touches on so many crucial aspects of this booming EV world, from manufacturing pressures and corporate responsibility to consumer safety
Right.
and the rights of whistleblowers. It's a complex web. And by unraveling it together, I think we can gain some valuable insights into the challenges and potential pitfalls of this industry that's growing at lightning speed.
You're right. And what's particularly fascinating here is the role of Tata Group. They own both Jaguar Land Rover, or JLR,
Okay.
and Tata Technologies, a consultancy firm that Vinfast was a client of. So you can already see where things might get complicated.
Absolutely. So to really understand the weight of Denli's claims, we need to first understand who he is. Denli's a mechanical engineer, specializing in chassis design, the backbone of a vehicle, so to speak.
Right.
He actually led the engineering team for the front suspension and chassis on Vinfast VF6 and VF7 models while he was employed by Tata Technologies.
And that's a critical point, because that connection to Tata Group is going to become really important. As we delve deeper, this is a situation that raises serious questions about potential conflicts of interest. When do companies prioritize client relationships over ethical concerns and potential safety issues?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? So let's get into the specifics of what Denli actually found. He claims that certain components in the chassis, particularly those in the suspension system, weren't properly designed and were prone to failing. Way too early, we're talking components snapping off after less than 15,000 miles.
Oh, wow.
That's alarming when they should be lasting for at least 90,000 miles.
Ideal. Think about that for a second. Imagine driving down the highway and suddenly you lose control because your suspension fails. Those are the potential consequences we're talking about here.
That's a terrifying thought. And to make it even more real, Denli actually gives some specific examples in his report. Things like the strut-to-knuckle connection loosening, brackets in drive units failing and falling off. These aren't just minor inconveniences, are they?
Not at all. These types of failures can lead to wheels becoming misaligned, potentially causing drivers to lose control of their vehicles, which could result in accidents. And it's important to remember that Denli claims to have actually witnessed these failures himself during testing at the Mirror Technology Park in the UK. These weren't just hypothetical concerns.
So how did Denli try to address these issues when he first discovered them? Well, like any responsible engineer, he reported the problems internally, both to his colleagues at Tata Technologies and directly to Vinfast. That seems like the right first step.
It is, and you would hope the companies would have these internal reporting mechanisms in place that allow employees to raise these concerns without fear of retaliation and where those concerns are taken seriously.
Unfortunately, in this case, it doesn't seem like things went as smoothly as they should have. Denli claims that while he strongly recommended redesigning the faulty components to ensure drivers' safety, Vinfast, who was at that time, gearing up for a major New York Stock Exchange listing, seemed more focused on pushing ahead with production and avoiding any potential delays or cost increases. It seems like there was a real conflict between safety and profit there.
Absolutely, and that's the real crux of the issue here, isn't it? When a company is faced with that choice, profit versus safety, which one wins out?
That's such a difficult question, and I imagine it's one that so many companies in rapidly evolving industries like EV manufacturing struggle with. It's a high-stakes game with intense competition and a constant pressure to innovate and get ahead. So Denli, feeling incredibly conflicted ethically and seeing no change in Vinfast's approach, decided to resign from Tata Technologies.
That decision to resign speaks volumes. Whistleblowers often find themselves making personal sacrifices to stand up for what they believe in. It's rarely an easy path.
And that brings us to an interesting turn of events. Later, Denli landed a new job, this time at JLR, which, if you remember, is also owned by Tata Group. But despite moving on, he continued to see reports of similar safety issues. in Vinfast vehicles, issues that he had raised previously. Some of these reports involved accidents, including a tragic one, where a family of 4 lost their lives.
This is where the story takes an even darker turn. It suggests that despite Dunley's warnings, these alleged safety issues persisted, potentially leading to real-world consequences.
And at this point, clearly troubled by what he was seeing, and feeling a sense of responsibility, Dunley made a bold move. He decided to go public with his concerns, posting about his experience and the safety issues he'd observed on Reddit.
It was a risky move, but it highlights the power of social media as a platform for whistleblowing. It provides a way for individuals to bypass traditional channels, reach a much larger audience, and potentially bring these issues into the spotlight.
But it didn't take long for Vinfast to identify Dunley as the author of those Reddit posts, and they promptly alerted Tata Group.
Here's where we see the potential downside of whistleblowing. Companies often view whistleblowers as threats to their reputation and will take steps to try to silence them.
And in Dunley's case, it seems like Tata Technologies took swift action, their executives, in an apparent attempt to protect their client Vinfast and avoid negative publicity, contacted JLR and requested Dunley's dismissal.
Think about the implications of that for a moment. Are companies allowed to suppress information about potential safety concerns just to protect their business relationships?
It's a disturbing thought, and unfortunately in this case, the pressure from Tata Technologies worked. Dunley was quickly fired from JLR, and to make matters worse, he was blacklisted on industry recruitment platforms, which essentially made it incredibly difficult for him to find another job in his field.
This blacklisting is a clear example of the power imbalances at play here. Dunley's attempt to expose potential safety issues resulted in him being penalized and ostracized from his profession.
And to understand the motivations behind Tata Group's actions, it's crucial to look at internal communications between their executives that were later obtained. These communications suggest that they were primarily focused on shielding Vinfast from any negative press and protecting their business relationship.
Again, we see that conflict of interest rearing its head. Should a company's loyalty to a client ever trump their responsibility to protect the public?
It's a huge question, and one that's particularly relevant in this case, given the potential dangers associated with these alleged safety concerns. So Dunley's firing and blacklisting bring up a number of legal and ethical considerations. In the UK, there are laws designed to protect whistleblowers, including the Public Interest Disclosure at Work Act of 1998.
This act aims to protect individuals who disclose information that they reasonably believe exposes a risk to public health and safety. Host. So the key question becomes, do Dunley's actions qualify as protected disclosures under this act? It's a question that legal experts are currently debating, and the outcome could set a precedent for future whistleblowing cases, especially in a rapidly evolving industry like EV manufacturing.
It's a landmark case that could really shape how companies handle whistleblowers moving forward. But even beyond the legal implications, there's a broader ethical question here about the tension between a company's responsibility to protect its clients versus its responsibility to protect the public.
Absolutely, and let's not forget, these allegations don't exist in a vacuum. There are real-world implications and potential risks to drivers out there. This isn't just theoretical.
Right, and that brings us to the current status of the Vinfast safety concerns themselves. Remember, the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, is actually investigating the Vinfast VF8 right now. They've received multiple reports of safety defects, including a problem with their lane keep assist system and a growing number of incident reports. That raise serious safety concerns.
It makes you wonder, how many drivers are out there completely unaware that the car they're driving could potentially have these hidden safety issues? It's unsettling.
It really is. And while Vinfast has stated that they are cooperating with the NHTSA investigation, the outcome of that investigation is still uncertain. This could have a major impact on Vinfast, especially as they try to gain a foothold in the U.S. market.
And this case really brings to light a broader concern about quality control and safety standards within the rapidly growing EV industry as a whole. As more and more new players enter the market, the pressure to innovate and compete is only going to intensify.
So how do we ensure that safety isn't being compromised in this race to the top?
That's a critical question, and it's one that goes beyond Vinfast. This is an issue that all EV manufacturers need to grapple with. As the demand for electric vehicles continues to soar, the pressure to ramp up production quickly and bring new models to market is immense, but that urgency can sometimes come at a cost. In this case, it seems like thorough testing and rigorous quality control might have taken a back seat.
And that's where things can go wrong, right? Cutting corners on safety, when you're dealing with complex machines like cars, can have devastating consequences.
Absolutely. This case should serve as a wake-up call. For the entire EV industry, there needs to be a renewed focus on establishing and maintaining really robust safety protocols, comprehensive testing procedures, and a culture that encourages, not punishes, employees who raise concerns about safety. Without that, how can we be sure that these cars are safe for consumers?
It's a real balancing act, isn't it? On the one hand, we want to see this EV revolution succeed. We want cleaner transportation options, and we need to transition away from fossil fuels. But on the other hand, that progress can't come at the cost of putting people's lives at risk.
You've hit the nail on the head. This case highlights the crucial need for a more nuanced approach. We need to find that sweet spot where we can encourage innovation and rapid growth in the EV sector, while also ensuring that safety remains a non-negotiable priority.
So what are some concrete steps that can be taken to ensure that these safety standards are being upheld?
Well, it starts with the manufacturers themselves. They need to make safety an integral part of their company culture. That means investing in rigorous testing, implementing comprehensive quality control measures at every stage of the process, and most importantly, creating an environment where employees feel safe and empowered to speak up about safety concerns without fear of being punished or silenced.
It's not just about ticking boxes on a safety checklist. It's about making safety a core value that permeates every level of the organization.
Exactly. And that kind of cultural shift requires strong leadership from the top down. Leaders need to make it absolutely clear that safety is not negotiable and that they will support employees who raise concerns, even when it's inconvenient or costly.
But it can't just be about internal mechanisms within companies, right? What about external oversight?
External oversight is absolutely critical. Regulatory bodies like the NHTSA play a vital role in setting and enforcing safety standards, conducting independent testing, and holding manufacturers accountable when those standards aren't met.
And it's not just about reacting to problems after they occur. It's about proactively working to prevent those problems from arising in the first place. That means having strong regulations and ensuring that those regulations keep pace with the rapid evolution of technology. In the EV space,
You're right, and that can be a challenge for regulators. They often struggle to keep up with the pace of innovation and might not always have the resources or expertise to thoroughly assess the safety of these incredibly complex systems that are found in modern EVs.
so it seems like a multi-pronged approach is needed here. Manufacturers need to prioritize safety. Regulators need to step up their oversight. And what about consumers? Do we have a role to play in all of this?
Absolutely. Consumers have a huge role to play. We need to be informed and discerning when making decisions about buying an EV. We need to demand transparency from manufacturers, carefully scrutinize safety ratings and reviews, and ultimately, support those companies that demonstrate a genuine commitment to safety and ethical practices.
Our purchasing decisions have power. We can collectively send a message to the industry that safety is a non-negotiable factor.
Right, and beyond purchasing decision, we can also advocate for stronger regulations and support organizations that are working to improve safety standards in the EV industry.
Denley's story also raises some broader questions about whistleblowers and the challenges they face when trying to expose wrongdoing, especially when going up against powerful corporations. It's a risky path, and as we've seen in his case, the potential consequences can be severe: job loss, reputational damage, and even blacklisting.
It's a sobering reminder of the power dynamics at play. Whistleblowers often find themselves isolated, right, and facing immense pressure to stay silent.
But it's such crucial work, isn't it? Whistleblowers play a vital role in exposing wrongdoing, holding powerful entities accountable, and ultimately protecting public safety. Without people willing to speak up, who knows what kinds of problems could go unnoticed and unaddressed?
Absolutely. Whistleblowers are often the first line of defense against corruption, negligence, and ethical breaches.
So how can we as a society do a better job of protecting whistleblowers and encouraging more people to come forward when they witness wrongdoing? Because let's face it, it takes a lot of courage to speak up, knowing the potential backlash you might face.
It does, and that's why we need to create a culture that supports and protects whistleblowers. That means strengthening legal protections, providing stronger anti-retaliation measures, ensuring confidentiality, and establishing truly independent channels for reporting concerns.
It also requires a shift in how we view whistleblowers. We need to stop seeing them as disloyal or troublemakers and start recognizing them for what they truly are: courageous individuals who are willing to risk their own well-being to protect others.
We need to celebrate whistleblowers as heroes, not villains. They are often the ones who shine a light on problems that would otherwise remain hidden. allowing us to address those problems and create a safer and more just society.
Denley's case raises the important question of where the line is between individual action and collective responsibility. We've talked about the roles of manufacturers, regulators, and consumers in shaping a safer EV industry. But what about the responsibility of individual employees within those organizations? When do you speak up? When do you stay silent?
These are incredibly tough questions. It's easy for us, looking from the outside, to say someone should have blown the whistle sooner or fought harder against a decision they knew was wrong. But the reality is often much more complex. Whistleblowers face immense pressure, both internally from their colleagues and externally from the company itself, to stay silent.
Like in Denley's case, he did try to raise his concerns internally, but it seems like those concerns were dismissed or ignored.
Exactly, and that's a common experience. For whistleblowers, they often feel like they're hitting a brick wall, trying to get anyone to take their concerns seriously.
So how can we empower employees to feel confident that their voices will be heard and that they won't be punished for speaking up?
It all comes down to creating a culture of ethical conduct within organizations. It's about fostering an environment where employees feel safe to raise concerns and know that they won't face retaliation for speaking truth to power.
That sounds ideal, but realistically, how do you implement that kind of cultural shift, especially within a large corporation that's laser focused on growth and profits?
It's definitely challenging, but it has to start with leadership. Leaders need to set the tone from the very top, demonstrating through their actions that ethical conduct is not just a talking point, but a core value that guides every decision the company makes.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. Leaders need to prove that they value integrity and accountability, and that they are truly willing to listen to and act on concerns raised by employees, even when those concerns are difficult, expensive, or inconvenient to address.
It's not just about punishing wrongdoing after the fact. It's about creating a preventative culture where ethical dilemmas are openly discussed and employees feel empowered to challenge decisions that they believe are wrong.
You're exactly right. It's about building a culture of ethical awareness and critical thinking, where employees are encouraged to think through the potential consequences of their actions and to speak up when they see something that doesn't align with the company's values.
And that brings us back to the bigger picture of corporate responsibility. It's not enough for companies to simply follow the rules and regulations. They have a responsibility to actively promote ethical conduct and create a culture where safety and integrity are paramount.
I completely agree. This case underscores the fact that corporate responsibility isn't just about staying out of legal trouble. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard, or when it costs you money.
It's a responsibility that extends beyond individual companies to encompass the entire industry, regulators, and even us as consumers. We all have a role to play in making sure that safety and ethics are at the forefront of the EV revolution.
We can't just sit back and assume that progress automatically equals a better and safer future. We need to be actively involved, questioning assumptions, holding powerful entities accountable, and demanding that safety and ethics remain central to every innovation.
This deep dive has really gotten me thinking about the interconnectedness of all these factors: technology ethics, corporate responsibility, consumer awareness, and how they all contribute to shaping the future of this industry. It's amazing to think that we're living through this massive shift in the automotive industry, with electric vehicles poised to become like the main mode of transportation in the near future. It's exciting to think about the positive changes this could bring: reducing carbon emissions, combating climate change, and sparking all sorts of innovation and economic opportunities.
Absolutely. The potential upsides of EVs are huge, but it would be naive to think that this transition will be without its bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Every major technological shift comes with its own set of risks and challenges that we need to be prepared to address.
You're right. Progress isn't always a smooth upward trajectory. Just look back at the early days of cars, airplanes, even the internet. Each of these innovations brought about huge changes, but they also had their fair share of hurdles and setbacks along the way.
Exactly. And that's why I think this deep dive into Denley's story is so important. It's a cautionary tale that reminds us that technological advancements should never come at the cost of human safety or ethical principles.
It really underscores the idea that even in the most cutting-edge industries, basic values like integrity, accountability, and transparency are absolutely essential.
I couldn't agree more. These values need to be woven into the very fabric of these organizations, from the factory floor to the executive suite. Having policies on paper is one thing, but creating a culture where those policies are truly lived and breathed is what really matters.
So how do we take these high-level concepts of ethics and responsibility and translate them into tangible actions within the EV industry? What can manufacturers, regulators, consumers, and even individual employees actually do to make sure that this transition to an electrified future is both safe and ethical?
There's no easy answer
Hmm.
or quick fix, but I think we can pinpoint a few key areas where we need to focus our efforts. Let's start with manufacturers. They need to take a hard look in the mirror and ask themselves if they are truly prioritizing safety at every stage of the process, from design and engineering to manufacturing and testing.
That means more than just checking boxes on a safety checklist, right?
Right. It's about fostering a deep-rooted commitment to safety as a core value that guides everything they do. And that commitment needs to extend to how they treat their employees, especially those who raise concerns. Whistleblowers should be seen as valuable allies in the quest for safety, not as threats that need to be silenced.
And what about regulators? What role do they play in ensuring that safety standards are upheld and that companies are held accountable?
Regulators need to be proactive, not just reactive. They need to be ahead of the curve. When it comes to technological advancements, making sure that regulations keep pace with the rapid innovation we're seeing in the EV industry. And they need to have the resources and expertise to conduct thorough investigations and enforce penalties when violations are found.
So it's about more than just reacting to problems after they've already occurred.
Absolutely. Regulators have a responsibility to foster a culture of safety from the outset, working with industry stakeholders to develop best practices that promote ethical conduct.
We've talked about manufacturers and regulators, but what about consumers? Do we have a part to play in shaping a safer and more ethical EV industry?
Absolutely. We as consumers wield a lot of power. We can demand transparency from manufacturers, scrutinize safety ratings and reviews, and support companies that are demonstrably committed to ethical practices and rigorous safety standards.
Our choices matter. We can use our purchasing power to reward those companies that are doing things the right way.
Exactly. And beyond our individual purchasing decisions, we can also advocate for stronger safety regulations and support organizations that are working to improve safety standards across the industry.
We can all be a part of the solution. It's not just up to the big players. Now, before we wrap things up, I think it's worth taking a moment to reflect on the power of individual action. Denley's story is a reminder that even one person speaking up can make a difference. Every employee within an organization has a responsibility to uphold ethical standards, to challenge the status quo, and to hold their colleagues accountable.
That's right. Creating a culture of collective responsibility is so important. It's about empowering each other to speak up when something isn't right, knowing that we'll have each other's backs.
Denley's case has really brought to light some of the complexities and challenges that we face as we navigate this exciting but also somewhat daunting transition to an EV-dominated world.
It certainly has. But I think it's also offered us some valuable insights and reminders. Above all, I think it highlights the importance of holding on to our values: integrity, accountability, and a commitment to human well-being. As we move forward, those values need to be the heart of every decision we make, every innovation we pursue, and every step we take toward this electrified future.
This deep dive has been a real journey, and I hope it's encouraged our listeners to think critically about the choices we make as consumers, as citizens, and as participants in this rapidly evolving world.
We all have a role to play in shaping the future, and it's up to each of us to make sure that it's a future we can be proud of. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.